What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Down Dog Athletics Podcast, Competitor's Guide to Mental Health and Mastery. My name is Paul Klingen, and I am your host. I want to thank you guys all for listening. Coming up on Thanksgiving, literally less than a week away. Couldn't be more excited. And just one little message before I get into today's guest, who I'm super excited about. But I've been talking to a ton of people, whether that's clients or people just thinking about nutrition or training or practicing better habits around meditation. And it keeps coming up, the idea that, oh, it's the holidays. I'll start after the holidays. You've said it. I've said it. We've all heard it. And I was just doing a little math in my head. I was like, man, that's 2 months. If you just look at November and December, and if you throw away the holidays, because it's the holidays, even though it really is only Thanksgiving, 1 day, Christmas and Christmas Eve, 2 days, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, maybe that's 5 days where it's like actually a holiday. But if you were to throw away 2 months for 50 years, that's almost 8.5 years. So for 8.5 years, you're just going to throw it away because 5 days that don't have a law about being an asshole about your diet or being a lazy bum. There's no law about that. But for some reason, we just throw the entire month away. And it plays with the concept of, oh, I messed up today or I messed up this, so I got to throw everything away. And if you drop a LaCroix, you're not going to throw away the rest of the 12-pack. The other 11 are great. So the only thing I want to say is if you feel like you're just going to throw away the 2 months right now, give yourself these last 5 weeks even. That's really what we got left. Give yourself these 5 weeks. Stay on target. Stay highly motivated. Keep your momentum going into 2020, and you'll thank yourself for it. And without further ado, today's guest. I'm super excited because this guy is an athlete, and we're able to talk soccer, and that's my favorite sport. And I'm talking about Jonathan Campbell. He's a professional soccer player and recently won the MLS Cup for the Seattle Sounders. He was part of the team, and it's so fun being able to talk to another athlete. He's also a Lululemon ambassador with me in one of the Seattle stores in U Village, and we talk about soccer. We talk about mental coaching, meditation, and everything that goes into keeping your mind right. So without further ado, here we go. All right. So we got Jonathan Campbell in the house, literally in the house that I live in. But it's nice that he's super close and able to come by and stop on the show. Jonathan, how's it going, man? You're a champion.
Yeah, it was a fun week and fun season. So it felt great to end the season that way. I was thinking about it was the last time I won a championship was my high school days for high school soccer. So it has been a long time that I've actually come away with the championship, and it feels good.
Yeah. Was that high school, like for your high school or for a club that you won the championship?
For my high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I remember being back in those high school days when I'm guessing you were probably the star player on your team. Were you the striker, or were you playing center back then?
I mean, I play center back, but I was a striker for that team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. When I played baseball, everyone was the shortstop or everyone was the pitcher.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you look back on those days and you're like, man, it was so fun being like the goal scorer. But then you have obviously a different role when you come into the professional level or even just higher college levels, because you played at North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
And
I played center back all the time there. Definitely not forward.
And for people who aren't as familiar with soccer and center back, is your height and your ability to be stronger than maybe the striker or the forward or different positions, is that where your skill set suits you best in that position?
Yeah, for sure. But there are like your special occasions. You know, nowadays you might see like a hold up striker that is a big body where they might play long balls to him and he's able to really like shield the defenders off. But when you look at it generally, your defenders, your center backs will be bigger, taller guys to clear, crosses in, like just dealing with it with headers, and just bigger bodies where you can, your forwards are typically smaller, so you might be able to hopefully push them around a little bit more.
Yeah. One of the things I believe that's really important is self-awareness. And in sports, self-awareness plays a big role in understanding where you fit in on the team. And I'm sure there's so many people that are like, no, I'm a striker, or no, I'm a midfielder. or know I'm a goalkeeper, and their skill set is better suited for a different position. How was your transition going from the top man and then getting pulled back into a defensive position? Did you know that that was happening the entire time, or was there a transition with your identity and making that shift?
Yeah, I mean, I would say at the pro level, it's more what you're talking about would be your identity within the team of just like the role you play. And that would shift, from each team you go to, et cetera. But when I'm looking at the position, it was more middle school times where I actually used to play forward and actually got pulled back to center back. But during high school, I was always a center back for my like club soccer.
Got it.
But it's just good enough where they played me at striker. So I always knew that was just for fun.
Yeah. What's the center back, maybe even just defensive position equivalent to scoring a goal? Obviously you can score a goal as a center back, but I'm thinking like a crazy bicycle kick where you go on a long run, dribble through several guys, and then you score. Is there anything like maybe clearing something off the line where you're like, this is the biggest adrenaline rush ever?
Yeah, I think like a goal line clearance, and then also, so that's one where maybe it's not even your fault, or whatever's happening, but like you just get behind a keeper, slide, and just block it off the line or clear it off the line, off a corner kick, someone heads it down, you're at the back post and clear it out. Those are definitely moments you live for, but also sometimes like you just get matched up where it's a counterattack and it's like 1v1, the opponent versus you.
Oh, yeah.
No one else around. If he gets a shot off, like good chance he scores. And so that's where it's just like you're matched up with him and that's your battle. And when you're able to like keep up with him, block him, and then like right before he shoots it, like block it, like that's your moment, where then people are like, okay, like that's why we paid that guy, right? Like that's why we brought him in. And so those are kind of your big moments to shine and show your worth.
Yeah. So for the average fan, they're going to see goals being scored and be like, oh, that's so incredible. And goals are definitely exciting, but saving goals, it's either a -1 or a +1. So the role that you're playing is just as important, but only high-level fans that know what they're watching, obviously coaches, players, respect what you're doing from a defensive position. Is there ever a time when you're like, man, I wish I could articulate or help people understand like how big of a role that I played in this game? Or maybe you had like friends or a significant other and they're like, oh, are you like, you didn't score any goals? And you're like, yeah, but I kind of saved like 7.
Yeah, I mean, there's those moments. Typically when you look at who receives man of the match, anytime there's a goal, like it's going to be the goal scorer, right? They're just going to get man of the match. It's going to typically be a forward, and that's what draws most of the fans, right? Goals.
Yeah.
But they like to see their team win. So now as fans and just people understand it more, so also with like family friends, more of them, now that I've gotten to this level, have watched games, so they have a bit of an understanding.
Yeah.
So I typically don't get that as much, like, oh, you didn't score any goals. But, I've never wanted to, like, have people understand that I played a big part in a game. But it is something where, like, you do want to receive recognition. And in the way of, like, when you've done a good job, it can be something where you get rewarded with getting a new contract, and that's a way of getting like reward and things and just continuing on with your career.
Yeah, totally. So I played catcher in college, and as a catcher, you're saving runs, you're doing things like blocking balls in the dirt where people are like, did you have a good game? And you're like, yeah, it was stellar. They're like, how many like hits did you have? And you're like, none, but you don't understand. Like I had a really good defensive game.
Yeah.
And so I always relate to goalies or center backs or any position where defense maybe is undervalued but plays such a big role and is so crucial in the game.
Well, I think one of the biggest things you could look at is just sometimes you don't create a goal scoring opportunity, but for center backs, like you should just complete almost every pass.
Yeah.
And there's going to be games where you don't, but like that game where you just like, I didn't lose the ball once.
Yeah.
Like you were flawless, right? Those are the games where people probably won't recognize that you didn't lose the ball once, but like that is so valuable.
Yeah.
Right?
I love the parallels with that, with doing the simple things and the things that may seem boring, but you do those over and over and over and you get really good at them, whether that's business, life, training, like doing the essentials really well and not necessarily worrying about the flair or the stuff that you see on a highlight reel, because with social media and with Sports Center or whatever, it is always the highlight reel. But to your point, being able to complete passes 100% of the time, or
Yeah.
being able to get up and go to the gym 100% of the time, or making sure that you meditate every single day, like those are the things that change lives. Those are the things that win games.
Yeah, I mean, also just in the season, it's really difficult to stay healthy.
Yeah.
So doing everything you can to, give your body the best chance at being available for 100% of the games, like that's huge.
Yeah.
Some people don't do it.
What would go into your recovery protocol that was specific to you, and then also what the team had the players do?
For me specifically, like I took a lot to meditation and working with a mental coach. I've had ups and downs in my career. Like rookie year, played a ton. Since then, like haven't played as much. And when you're not playing games, it's hard to stay as mentally like positive about how things are going and just, having that mojo, right? So that's been difficult, and that's why I've worked with like a mental coach to make sure I'm on top of that. And then the meditation was more, I did it in the mornings so that like every day I, at the end of it, focused in on like what I wanted to achieve that day.
Yeah.
You know, too many people get caught up with like long-term goals, and where they want to end, and they don't just look at like what could I do today, right? So that's been a huge thing for me, and I always liked it because that meditation gave me the break from just like all the chaos, where then you're like, okay, afterwards, like now 5 minutes, let me just detail what I want to do at practice, after practice, and like literally right after practice, but then also like later in the day.
Yeah.
So that would be the two things or three things for me personally. For the team, occasionally we would have like yoga sessions. We've got reformers. So a lot before training, we do activation, firing up your glutes, those type of things that seem monotonous and just, almost a pain. And a lot of players don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And just doing it on a repetitive daily basis can get frustrating, where you're like, God, can we just skip it for one day,
Yeah.
right? But the science has shown it leads to not having injuries. So that's the thing that like you want to be available for 100% of the games. So that's what we do. And the long warm up practice. And then afterwards, ice baths, working with physios. You could get back on like reformer, do reformer work to, corrective body position. Trying to think of some of the other, recovery methods that we have, foam rollers, but, all of those type of things.
Yeah, totally. Again, coming back to the thing of you want to skip the glute activation or the things that suck, but if you don't do those, you're not available, and it just has such a cascading effect to being able to go out there and actually perform and be available.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at it and you want to just be on the ball, right? Like, well, I'd rather spend this 15 minutes just on the ball working on skills.
Yeah.
It's like, that's great, right? But you have to do these so that you don't go out there on the ball and then pull a muscle.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm curious with that, because you always see, again, this is highlights, so you don't always see, and I'm not a professional soccer player, but Neymar's got incredible skills. Is he also doing the glute activation and strength training? Where is there a gap at certain levels or with certain players that just God put them on this earth to score goals or to play football or soccer? Versus I think of a guy like Ronaldo, where he just created a machine himself. Where have you seen that in professional soccer, where some people are able to get away with it, or maybe they just do spend more time on skills?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be the God-given talent, and that will get you to some extent. Then there's the difference with like Neymar and me, where Neymar probably started playing soccer when he was born.
Yeah.
Right. And I like fully committed to soccer my junior year in high school. As I like sophomore year, I quit soccer and was going to play basketball. Right. So like that is just two completely different worlds right there. So I do think like if I would have committed to playing soccer early on, I would have been better. Now that I play soccer, I wish I would have done that.
Yeah.
But it's hard to like say, also I could have committed to it early on and then burned out and never enjoyed it past high school, right?
Yeah.
And that happened to a ton of people in college. They get to college and you're like, man, this guy was literally the number one national recruit, and now he can't even play for our college team. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
But for sure, they're doing all the activation. They're doing all of that. Nowadays, like, internet, everything, all the science behind it is so out there that you have, like, their trainers, everyone is forcing them to do it. There is a difference, though, with, like, I've heard, like, in Hazard is one of, like, the laziest guys in practice. You put him out there in a game, and he just performs, like, amazing.
That's crazy.
And so it's one of those things, like, do you want to piss him off? Or, like, if you're okay with just having the games and having that quality, like, you have him on your team.
Yeah.
If it pisses you off enough, you don't have him on your team. But there's people like Ronaldo who just work every single day and do, like, every little thing to get that advantage. So you still see differences for sure. Still some people crush candy every day for flights, when we're going on away trips, and it's just like, that's just what they do.
Yeah.
It's not helping them, but that's their routine and they perform on the field. So
yeah,
you're not going to say anything.
Such an interesting conundrum to be in as a manager when your job's to win games, but you're also responsible for the culture of the team and establishing an authority, and kicking off a player or not playing a player that is better, for me, seems like it would be one of the hardest decisions to make.
Yeah, I've never wanted to be a manager or coach because I hate dealing with egos, and that's one of the things where you see it all the time. Every single team, right? You're gonna have players that are gonna push the boundaries, push the limits, like skip a practice, skip a training or a weight session, or show up late. Are they 5 minutes late? Are they 15-minute late? All those little things. And, when are you willing to let it slide, and when are you willing to put your foot down and say, like, hey, you're not starting for the next game?
Yeah.
Because then you risk, okay, am I going to piss this guy off where then he's going to quit on me for 6 months? Or are you going to fire him up and,
that's a whole nother
exactly.
point too.
So there's a fine line, but that's just not something that I ever want to deal with.
Yeah. You brought up an interesting point about international players specifically. They play soccer as soon as they come out of the womb. They're juggling a ball. And people always wonder, why isn't America as good at soccer as the rest of the world? And you kind of illustrated a point where you're kind of waffling in high school on what you want to do, but you also don't want to burn out. There's a lot of different ways I want to go with this question, but I think the first one is, what does America need to do in order to elevate themselves on the world stage when it comes to soccer?
Yeah. I'll try to condense it as much as I can.
Yeah.
One, there's too many sports in America that draw you to playing multiple sports. Brazil, very few people are going to play basketball, and so 99% of them are just going to play soccer from day one. In America, we have the allure of making it big in the NFL, making it big in the NBA. Just now we're starting to see making it big in soccer.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I couldn't even find an MLS game on TV.
Yeah.
Right? And so there was never that hero that you're looking up to then be like, oh, I want to be that guy. So now that time is changing, which is great. And that's why you see people getting into soccer at an earlier age, but still we have the draw of multiple sports.
Yeah.
So that makes it tough, where you also lose some of your best talent. Their bodies would be different, but imagine if LeBron James was playing soccer from day one.
Right.
I'm sure he would be built a little bit different, but that's athleticism. We are losing them to other sports. So that makes it tough.
Yeah.
Another thing is education. Education is so valued here, where we push to go to college because you can get free education, which then after soccer, now you have one of the best jobs out there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in other worlds, they don't have that same system. They're willing to risk it all for soccer because that's making it big.
Yeah.
And when they don't make it, they become an entry-level job. So that's one of the hardest things, where I think what America could do is find a way where you have people going to professional teams, because now we're having like 16-year-olds sign with MLS teams. So can you make it where a lot more 16-year-olds can sign with MLS teams, partner with local colleges, and give them education? That doesn't work for NCAA because you can't pay you got to find a different way about it. But my point is, like, if you go play pro immediately, we have like SNHU as a partner, an online education or college. Well, everyone would rather see me have a, business degree from Carolina than SNHU.
Yeah.
So can we make it where, Seattle U is partnering with Seattle Sounders, and so that I can get an education with Seattle U?
Wow.
That to me, I think, is crucial, because just the values of how America works is different than like foreign countries.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And I think the other question I had with that is, do you think that players should specialize at a younger age, or is there value in being a better athlete all around?
I think if you said you want to play soccer, then specializing immediately in soccer is your route.
Yeah.
If you're unsure, then it's difficult, because if you're unsure, and then, a lot of people don't play professional soccer, but having the, just interactions, playing multiple sports, being athletic all around, like, I think that has a ton of value. And will that lead you to having a better chance at playing professional soccer? I don't think so. So I think if you're fully devoted to giving it the best shot at playing a professional sport, you need to specialize in that sport early on and drop the other ones. But, like, I loved high school soccer. I loved playing it, but trust me, it did not get me, like, better.
Yeah.
It was not something that developed me. I would have been better off playing, club academy soccer.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes too, it's the football team at your high school might have had big stadiums and a ton of fans, and the environment and atmosphere is so much different. Versus if people aren't going to your soccer games, it's like, okay, I'm really good at this, but people aren't coming to watch. I remember playing basketball in high school, and it was the most fun I ever had, but I was way better at baseball. But if I could go back and play one more game, it would be in a packed little high school gym in playoffs, where that environment and that all exists. But, I think I agree with you in that specializing has to happen. Yeah. You just look at how people develop, whether it's linguistically, with their bodies and micro movement patterns, especially when you're dribbling a ball with your foot. Like, that's all learned at such a young age when you have that neuroplasticity, and you can actually create those pathways that once you're 12, 13, you can't just pick those up. It's never going to be as refined as someone that starts at age 3 or 4.
Yeah, I feel that way completely. Like, I wish, with my foot skills, like, I work on things every day, but it's just like, it's so much harder to break it and get just at such a natural level, where some of these people who played when they were 5 and just only played that, they just look so much more natural.
Yeah. I got a question. Do you think that if LeBron played soccer from age 4, he would be the kind of athlete that he is in basketball? And I want to give my opinion first, not being an expert. But when you're that tall, you have less steps to go down the pitch, so you'd have less opportunity to change direction. So you have someone like Xavi or Iniesta that can just spin around in circles and take 40 or 50 steps in a much smaller space. They're able to change direction with the ball quicker. I feel like if you have a big, tall athlete like LeBron James, it'd be much easier to take the ball from him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. So usually your smaller guys are better at dribbling. Right. But you have your typical bodies in positions. So your attacking players may be smaller, your defenders may be bigger, your keepers, longer arms, bigger body. Like, short keepers with short arms, it's not like there are some out there, but it's like that is not, your best shot. So LeBron, like, would he be a small little forward trying to dribble all the time? No, like, he might actually be a defender, but, like, imagine trying this guy flying in on corner kicks, going for headers. Like, he'd be above everyone and just, like, smashing these in. So powerful, like, no one would be able to get in his way and really block him. So there's just, it's difficult. I don't think soccer would have been the first sport I would pick for LeBron.
Right.
Like football, some of those sports I feel like would be a better shot for him. But the thing is just like you have different scenarios where like your forward you typically might be smaller, but you also have the Peter Crouch who was 6'5" and just like a beanpole.
Yeah.
But he played center forward, and he was so good on the ball and everything, but he just like in the air. Now he's going against these center backs who might be 6'3", and they're used to dealing with forwards who are 5'8".
Yeah.
And now you're going against a guy 6'4". Like it just completely changes it. So you do see those like different scenarios.
Yeah. I'm trying to picture Messi like dribbling at LeBron.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's such an intimidating, imposing figure, but he's got to be really tight with his angles, I guess, is maybe a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, there's honestly people that, are playing currently that have similar bodies to like LeBron.
Yeah.
Who
are some of the guys that you like to watch at your position that maybe you model yourself after, or you just really admire their ability to play the game?
Yeah, I mean, one that I like is like Sergio Ramos, and he gets a lot of crap for how much he fouls, but he's always been an attacking threat for his team. So it's one of those things for center backs, like you might not be on the score sheet that often, but in a season, like he adds a couple goals here and there.
Yeah.
So if you can take 0 goals to 6 goals, like it makes a difference. So he steps up in big moments like that. And, other people that like I've watched back in the day were like Vidic, and Rio Ferdinand for Manchester United. Just like the other thing you try to take away is where they're typically playing the ball, like how good are they on the ball. Like De Ligt from he's now with Juventus, like, he's a young up and coming player. So the thing is, like, you look at certain players and you just see like, okay, like the Sergio Ramos, like he's really good in the air. How can I like take something from his game? And this player, he's really good on the ball. Like, how can I look at what he's doing and try to like add that to my game? So you add like little pieces from each player.
Yeah. I also love Sergio Ramos. I like his tattoos and his flair.
Yeah.
He was one of the inspirations for why I got a tattoo.
He's got a lot of flair.
But yeah, he's also an insanely attractive, good-looking dude.
Yeah.
Which anytime I watch Spain, I'm always like, man, I would not want to live there because it would just not be a fair fight.
Yeah, you definitely wish you were like, yeah, I wish I was that guy.
Yeah.
He's doing something right.
But to your point, he will take penalty kicks. I've seen him take free kicks, and I believe in one of the last few Champions Leagues that he's won, he scored a goal either right at extra time or in extra time, which is huge.
Yeah. I mean, it makes like such a big difference, and he's always stepped up in big games like that. But he also will step up in big games and get a red card for his team.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that was not what you wanted.
Yeah. Do you ever, I guess better way to put this is the thought of getting a yellow, right? That's not the end of the world, but you obviously don't want two. You don't want a red card. Does that ever go into your mind where you're like, oh, I'm holding back a little bit because like I have a problem with fouling too much, or I know that I'm on a yellow? How do you balance that aggressiveness with playing how you need to play in order to stay on the pitch?
Yeah, I probably actually have the opposite. I'm like too nice about it where I don't pick up enough cards.
Yeah.
I try not to pick up cards, but it's something where like sometimes you have to make a tactical decision. A player, knocks the ball around you and he's kind of in on a breakaway. You've got a player kind of back there, so if you grab him, it's not a red card, it's a yellow card. So like I have to be better in those moments. Like I need to grab him, take the yellow card. He'll stop the play there. He doesn't score. Sometimes like I don't want to pick up cards, and so then like once you're beat, you like let him go.
Yeah.
Once you have that yellow card, then you have to be like, okay, like I can't go into a crunching tackle because if I miss the ball, like he's gonna be like second yellow, red card, you're out.
Right.
So that's where you have to play those lines and be careful with it. I've never had a problem with like red cards. I mean, I think you have to be pretty vicious with it. There's very few players, but like once they have an issue with it, like it becomes pretty known.
Yeah.
It's very obvious.
It almost draws the ref's eyes to you where it's like, was it a foul? Was it not? This guy's got a reputation, so I'm going to give it a yellow or a red to him. I feel like you saw it with John Terry a lot.
Yeah, you're expecting it. I mean, I'm blanking on the guy who He went to LA Galaxy for a bit, but he was here for like half a season. And just like red card, suspended for 3 games, came back, red card, and you're like,
Just a UFC
dude, if you
fighter.
you're just like, if you make any tackle, like people are just watching you,
Yeah.
right? Like you do anything and like they're ready. So he couldn't get away with anything anymore. But he was also like very aggressive with it.
Yeah. Interesting. The next thing I kind of want to talk about is life after football. You talked about people in other countries where they go and get an entry-level job right after, and I've heard stories of people not being able to read, and it's because they get put in an academy at 12 years old and they never learn how to read. And I kind of laugh, but at the same time, I would be in the same position if no one ever taught me to read. So what kind of thought have you given to, after professional football, and what do you like to do when you're not out on the pitch?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew that soccer was a dream of mine, but it was not like my long-term solution.
Yeah.
I did not think that this was going to be something that then I could retire afterwards and sit on some money. For me, I've done little things here and there just to stay active outside of soccer. But the main thing, I was focused in finance in college, so I was always found that interesting. And now that I've played professional soccer, I think it'd be really interesting to mix the two and find like a sports equity or like a sports capital private equity group, maybe like a consulting group, something where it combines both worlds. I'm still using my finance background, but I'm also leveraging like, hey, I was a professional athlete, and I know this field.
Yeah.
Right. So use both. And I think it would be highly entertaining for me too, rather than doing a project on how Nashville is moving from a USL team to an MLS team. Who do they need to hire? How should they market it? What media should look like, right? So that I would find interesting.
Yeah.
Rather than working on how Smucker's needs to rebrand their, jelly or something, right? Or like PB&J's. So that's why I feel like it would also be very interesting. So that's what I'm kind of interested in post-soccer. And not that, I mean, it's still somewhat similar just being in a sports or health and wellness brand. But as you know, like working as a Lululemon ambassador has always been like really nice because it's allowed me to make connections outside of soccer.
Yeah.
It's kept me around things that I've been interested in, doing yoga, just being healthy, eating right, making me learn more about how to cook properly, all those little things. So that's been like another big passion of mine, and it's been a big help. So I did that in Chicago and here in Seattle.
Yeah. I think that would be a really cool way for you to kind of almost be like an advisor to players in the league. It's like, hey, man, I was in the league, and here's how to set up yourself after from a financial standpoint or from a business standpoint, because it sounds like you have that background.
Yeah, and like with our union, there's like a couple guys in there that are currently doing that. There's guys who are stationed in there to help you transition. There's a couple guys that try to help you with finances, for some guys that maybe weren't taught that much or didn't go to college.
Yeah,
that are in the league.
Yeah. So one of the other things too that I think would be interesting is working as a mental coach to the point that you mentioned earlier, where you have one that you work with. What are some of the things that you guys do daily and when you're working together with each other?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the season is so long, and you're always going to go through ups and downs. Sometimes you get super frustrated with it, and then other times like you're riding a high on it. A lot of things that we look at is creating goals of where I want to be in a month, and then breaking it down to like a daily basis, a weekly basis. Like this week, I'm going to work on this. So every week we would have a weekly plan. It would be things that I'm going to work on after practice. If I have issues on the field, what am I going to say to myself to break that? Who's going to hold me accountable? So those were like weekly ones. Then we would look at daily debriefs. So after training, you would look at, did I achieve my goals? Like, what did I do well in? What did I do poorly in? So that's really helpful as well, because it keeps you engaged, keeps you knowledgeable about what you're trying to achieve, because you might be starting and playing every game, and you might also like not play any games.
Yeah.
You know, and I was on the latter end of having like 5 games this season. So it's tough because you're not going to have many chances, right? And then you go a month and a half without playing, and they're like, hey, we need you for a game. So are you like mentally ready for that?
Yeah.
So that is where it keeps you mentally engaged and focused in on what you can do and improve, because you could also go the whole season and not play that much, and you're just like, bummed about it. I didn't really get better.
Yeah.
I could also go the whole season, not really play that much, and be like, man, you know what? Like, I didn't play in that many games, but like every day in practice, I was trying to improve on this stuff. I felt like I made, you know, a lot of grounds on this. This is where I could improve for next year that I can work on the off season. So those are kind of the daily things and goals. The other main thing that I think we would work on is how to stay mentally positive about your performance. Not looking at, I'm not playing, so I must be doing poorly. And so that could be breaking down prior games where you're like, I crushed in this game. Everything was on. Just watching that again, right? And you're like, I know I haven't played in forever, but this is what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is a big help, because after not doing it for a while, you just like, it's hard to believe, like, when you get that one game and you're like, man, all these guys have been playing every game. Like, I can't perform up to this level. But then you watch this and you're like, I did this like a year ago. You know, like, why could I not do it now? So it's difficult, you know, just to have that mental capacity and stay positive about things. But having someone to talk through it and keep you just, you know, honest about it and engaged can be crucial.
Yeah. The confidence one and the positivity one is one that I think is really cool, and I hadn't thought of it that way. Like, if we could all go back and look at a day in the boardroom or a day at the gym when we just smashed it, and then be like, oh, yeah, I can do that. I've read a couple NLP books, neurolinguistic programming. I don't know if that's what your coach used, but being able to go back and draw upon times when you had that resource of confidence, because you're right, you've done it before. There's no reason to believe why you can't do it again, but that plays such a big role in staying confident, in staying sharp. You mentioned, you know, you're getting in sparingly, but there's nothing to say that like your skills have diminished as long as you're doing everything that you can do to stay on top of it.
Right. Exactly. And that's where I'm lucky in the fact that we have film, right? Like, you might not be able to watch film of yourself in a boardroom where it's like, I just don't have anything. It's just off of your memory.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where it's lucky that we have that.
One of the other things too that I find really interesting with soccer, football, I never know what to call it. Should I just call it soccer in America?
I think soccer in America is fine.
Okay,
right? Like,
cool. I grew up playing baseball, and on the other side of left field fence was the soccer team. And I was like, oh my God, I would never catch myself dead on that pitch or field. Just because, you know, soccer has this stigma as not an American sport or whatever stigma it has. And I find it really interesting that it has a similar stigma to mental health or to yoga or meditation, which is what I talk a lot about on this podcast. Do you feel like that's starting to break down? One, how did you deal with that as someone that obviously excelled in it? And when you're playing with a bunch of other professional players, you guys aren't maybe feeling that as much. But what are some of the things that you would recommend someone maybe look at something with a different lens when they think, oh, that's not for me, or that's not something that I can relate to?
Yeah. You know, my biggest thing is like, just try it out, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, we could go on a tangent with this one, but I watch Game Changers and I'm trying to go vegan. And it's like, people are like, oh, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, dude, I'm going to live for 50, 60 more years plus, hopefully.
Yeah.
And it's like, what if I go vegan and it's amazing? Like, what if I feel just 100 times better?
Yeah.
Then I'm going to keep it up. But what if I don't feel any difference? Then drop it.
And you're back where you were before
you
started.
I mean, what's the issue, right? So the same thing with like working with a mental coach, right? Why not? Like, what if you're like, man, this is really working? Or if you're like, this just isn't working for me. It's just not right for me. And that's what, like, so many people are different. It doesn't mean that just because one person's doing it, like, you have to do it, but it could help you. And people are breaking down the stigma with it, with like the working with a mental coach. But also, my thing with it is that I think I've seen it a little bit sometimes where it's more team oriented, but I think it's so easy to work with a mental coach outside of like your friends.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be, even if you are embarrassed by it, it's something where it's like, yeah, but like you don't have to share it with your friends. It's literally like after practice, like working with someone. Doesn't have to be anything more than that.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to do behind the scenes. And yeah, I mean, I think people should be fine with it, try it out, and if it works for them, go for it. If not, like you can drop it. Um, Honestly, probably most people would give you like a trial period with it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And your friends don't need to know, but there's also nothing wrong with sharing it. You go to the physio because you rolled your ankle and they help you work through your pain. Well, that's the exact same thing as you go to a mental coach. You're working through something, they help you through with your pain. It's just your mind or your body. And so I don't think there's any difference at all other than one is tangible and the other one is in your head.
Yeah, and I will say a lot of people don't talk about it or share with their friends, and not in like a negative way. It's just like I was saying, they just do a lot of it on their own.
Yeah.
But you do see it where I was like rooming with a buddy, and then I see him plugging his headphones before every game, and he's like running through, maybe a music or a video that he has, but then also like something that this was the other point that like I blanked on, but like going through mental imagery where like we would just go through, 10 passes on my left foot over and over again in my head, and then you go out in the practice field and it feels more natural. But same thing, like he kicks up before a game and he puts his headphones in and he's just like locking in and doing imagery in his head. Um, did we ever like talk extensively about it? No, but he was like, "Oh yeah, we kind of did this at Stanford, and just like, oh cool." Not something you necessarily have to share with, but like you also don't need to be embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
So I think, more and more people have come out and said that they're doing it. So that's kind of breaking down the barrier, and that's why I try to like, just maybe on Instagram, whatever. Like I try to just throw it out there, that I'm doing meditation or working with a mental coach, because do I have to share more than that?
Yeah.
No, but it also just like breaks down that stigma.
When I recently watched a video and read an ESPN article. Russell Wilson's been working with a mental coach, and he's attributed that to so much of his success over the years. He's had some real tough things to bounce back from. Like, you want to talk about missing a penalty kick? He threw an interception on the 1 yard line in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yet he's able to come back. We saw in Monday Night Football, threw an interception. Boom, guy's just unshakable. And so being able to go back and revisit towards like, okay, that happened, but that's not true. That's not who I am. I'm more than capable of completing a 1 yard pass or passing with my left foot 10 times in a row.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a key component of being an athlete, is being able to just like block out the mistake and move on from it, and not dwelling on it.
Yeah, totally. Couple other things before I let you go. What's coming up for you? Champion. Now, what are you looking forward to in 2020?
Yeah, so great into the season. And it was a great time with the Sounders, but I was not surprised. Like, I think they typically do this with the Sounders, but like they'll look for players, give them like a lower contract, but then a big option year. And so I was not surprised that they did not take my option year, did not catch me off guard. But that means, now currently looking for a new team. So we'll have a couple re-entry drafts, then the MLS Super Draft, where they pick from college teams, which then gives them a better idea of who they have on their team, roster needs. So you're kind of waiting to see if a team calls, and takes you in that regards, and gives you a contract before preseason. And then the last effort is you go into a preseason, you try out with a team, and hope at the end of that, which would be like later January into February, you hope you have a contract going into the start of the season, like March 1.
Yeah. As a current player, is there more competition coming in from leagues over in Europe or in other countries where they're funneling into the MLS, or is there more competition coming from the bottom up of colleges or high schools?
Both, yeah. I mean, 100% from abroad. And the thing with abroad is you only have so many roster spots. and now they keep on increasing the amount that we can spend. So owners are willing to spend more money, which then allows the market capabilities to increase drastically. So before, if they could only pay someone $75K to bring them over, now if they can pay $200K easily, like their availability and their market of what players they can get has just exponentially increased, right? So that has been a huge difference, made it way harder. The coming up from beneath, it's not something that like you're technically as worried about players coming out of college. It's more that teams are starting to sign like 16-year-olds. Maybe they don't use them in the year, but maybe they do. But because otherwise, those players are now getting recognized by teams abroad. So if you don't sign the player, then he could sign abroad and you lose any profit on him. So your top players, teams are starting to try to take early on because they don't want to miss out on it.
Yeah.
And what does that do for players like me? Less roster spots.
Yeah.
You know, it just like it moves up the chain, right? So like then if you fill those lower spots, then like, you know, everyone kind of moves up and you have like less spots that you can fill.
Yeah.
So it has honestly been incredible with the change in the 4 years that I've been in the league. Like I think the amount being spent has just tripled among players. So it has become very hard.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's exciting, and I have no doubt that you'll be successful wherever you go, and you have a good head on your shoulders with a lot of skills afterwards. To your point, you have like 50 more years. I always like to use The Rock as the example. He's jacked and like 51. So
yeah, I got to get whatever he's doing. But yeah, I mean, it's something that the league has increased so much, but would I want to have it any other way? No. Like I want to see the league succeed and do well, and being part of it while you can has been amazing.
yeah. Well, if the league's not doing well, there's 5,000 people at your games, and it's not as fun and exciting.
Yeah.
Or you're not on primetime television.
Yeah, like now we had 70,000 at like our final. Like it's just incredible.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So times have completely changed from when I first entered the league, and then also when I was just growing up watching soccer.
Yeah.
You know, like that just was not. No one went to soccer games when I was growing up.
Yeah. It'll be cool to see.
Or none of my friends.
It'll be cool to see it continue to change, and who knows, maybe we'll win the next World Cup in 16 years or.
Yeah, we got some time.
We got some work
but
to do.
I mean, I think they're taking the right steps, and you see more and more people getting into soccer at such an early age and specializing in it. So like that's going to give us a good shot.
Yeah.
You know?
Pulisic has been crushing it at Chelsea.
Yeah, and he actually he got sat for a while for the first couple games, and then like he worked his way back in, and that speaks, you know, to his mental capacity and strength, you know, just like not letting it get to him that he got dropped from the 18 and coming back, and when he got his chance, like he performed, you know, and that's what you got to do.
Yeah, Lampard was one of my favorite players. The reason why I got into soccer so much is I played a ton of FIFA, and randomly the team that I chose was Chelsea. So it was like Drogba, Terry, Lampard, Torres, and from that point I was like, all right, this is my team. There's a quote where it's like, you can change your wife, you can change your religion, you can change your house, but you can never change your football club. So I'm like, all right, fine. It's tattooed on me. I'm a Chelsea Blues fan.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I did the same but went for Manchester United.
Yeah. When you mentioned Vidic and Rio, I was like, okay,
Oh, yeah.
That's probably
You see the difference.
probably a Man U guy right there. One last one is just like, what was the highlight of the year? I know mine for you was being able to watch you score against Dortmund.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, once again, one of those times where, you know, you get on the field for him 5 times, right? And taking the opportunity there and scoring was incredible. So that was like my personal highlight.
Yeah.
And then team highlight for sure has to be winning, you know, the championship and just like being part of such a special group. And the other one I would say is the LAFC game away. LAFC obviously just had a great year, played the best soccer, and we went in there and I just felt like we were flawless. You know, just watching how well the guys were moving and just shutting down like every option. I think that was the best game we played all year.
Yeah.
Right. So like that was kind of the pinnacle moment with how our team performed. And once we did that, I mean, you just felt like we could beat anyone.
Yeah, that's cool. LAFC, were they new? Like, they're a couple years new?
A couple years new.
Okay.
Yeah, this was not their first year, but second or third.
It's crazy that, to your point, the MLS has been growing. There's 2 teams in LA.
Yeah. And they're adding all the time. I hope North Carolina gets one soon.
Yeah.
Charlotte, I know, is making a push for it.
Well, Nashville, you said they're moving.
Nashville's, they're just moving from USL to MLS, so they're getting a team this year, and the other team is Miami coming in.
Okay.
And then there's a couple other ones in the pipeline.
Is Miami the David Beckham-backed one
Yeah.
that he's been trying to push for years?
Yeah. He's got it.
He's got it.
Yeah, so next year they're up and running.
Yeah, that team's going to have the smoothest kits.
Oh, I
Probably
know.
the best-dressed team in the league.
Free haircuts, best, hair products, everything, but
And just
probably all tatted up.
Yeah, and if they can't hit a free kick from 30 out,
He'll show them.
fired. Yeah, he'll show them. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking soccer, meditation, a lot of mental stuff, right in line with everything that I'm trying to make this podcast about. And it's cool to hear, a professional athlete talk about these things so candidly and just be such a cool dude.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and appreciate you running the podcast.
Yeah. Where can people find you on social just so that they can follow along with whatever it is that you're doing?
So that's actually for the soccer football debate. It's Johnny Football, JONNYFUTBOL. So you can follow along there. I post a lot of my dogs, so you
your
can
dog.
see Leo there.
Oh man, I wish we would have talked more about the dog, but you're a big dog guy.
Yeah, he helps with the whole mental capacity and strength thing.
It's crazy how it's like if we could be as positive as dogs are, we would have the best lives ever.
Yeah, he definitely helps with me being positive.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Have an awesome next year and years to come.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening to the Down Dog Athletics podcast. I got a few favors. It's the holidays. I hope you're in that cheerful giving mood. If you could give me 5 stars on iTunes, leave me a rating and a review. I would really appreciate that. It helps me grow the podcast and get other cool guests like Johnny Football on. And then also, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, paul@downdogathletics.com. If you're interested in coaching, go to my website, downdogathletics.com, fill out a coaching application. Other than that, have an awesome time with your friends and family this next week.